Since it's week 1 and we love hot takes, it's time to go over the winners and losers and overreact to week 1. I have 6 teams written down to talk about, 3 winners and 3 losers of week 1. Our first winner is the Green Bay Packers, who beat the Chicago Bears as they dominated in the second half, winning 38-20. This was Jordan Love's first real start. He did have that one back in like 2021, but the Jordan Love era got off to a great start. It was a 1-point spread, so this game could have went either way. And first off, shout out to the Packers offensive line, who allowed 2 total pressures. Love passing was 15 of 27 for 245 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, and a 123 passer rating. And best of all, his wide receiver 1, Christian Watson, was out with a hamstring injury. Romeo Doubs had a couple touchdown catches. One of those was a fade route looking like Devontae Adams. And Green Bay's pass rush was very good in this game. I know Chicago's offensive line is not that good, but Kenny Clark looked great, and Quay Walker had an amazing pick 6, bouncing off a Bears lineman and taking it all the way. But obviously the most exciting part about this game was Jordan Love. He made a lot of good plays on 3rd down and even 4th down. Sure, he did miss some throws. He wasn't exactly perfect, but he did look the part so far. If I'm a Packers fan, I'd be excited for the weeks going forward. They get Atlanta in Atlanta next week, which I'm assuming should be a close spread and another fun game. Now, can the Packers compete for the North? I mean, it's possible. We saw 2 of the teams lose in this division. That includes the Vikings and of course the Bears, who the Packers beat in this game. We saw the Lions look impressive on Thursday, so maybe they're in the driver's seat right now, but the Packers may be right behind them. They're still a pretty good team. Our first loser is the Cincinnati Bengals, who just did not look right the entire day. In fairness, their defense did hold up in the first half, only allowing 10 points to Deshaun Watson and the Browns, but in the second half, things fell apart on both sides. Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense from the start looked terrible. Burrow looked awful, he looked hurt, he looked inaccurate, indecisive, and the Bengals offensive line was maybe the worst in football in week 1 outside of the Giants. Their offensive line had the worst pass block win rate of 30%. That was the lowest of any afternoon game yesterday. The Bengals offense in total only had 6 first downs, and Joe Burrow was pulled before the game even ended. I guess on the bright side, Cincinnati did not have a single turnover. I remember last year they had 5 in week 1 versus Pittsburgh, and the excuses are there. You can say, oh, Joe Burrow just came back from his injury, didn't play in the preseason, it was bad weather, but that offense looked very ugly. Hopefully their offensive line can turn things around. They play Baltimore next week, which does not get much easier. Baltimore in their own right, they didn't look amazing. They did win by a decent amount, but they didn't play that great. So Bengals Ravens should be a tight matchup in week 2. Definitely looking forward to that one. Our next winner is the San Francisco 49ers, who went into Pittsburgh and demolished the Steelers. As I've said the past few months here, I'm very high on Pittsburgh. I actually thought they would win this game, but I knew pretty early into this one that was not the right pick. The Niners defense was nasty. Drake Jackson had a sack on the first drive of the game. Trevarius Ward had an interception, picking up where he left off last year. And San Fran had 5 sacks total and 2 interceptions total. Pittsburgh's offense did not get a first down until 1 minute remaining in the second quarter. They almost went an entire half without getting a first down. That's how dominant the Niners were, or maybe how bad the Pittsburgh offense was. Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy had it working. 8 catches, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Brandon Ayuk. And Christian McCaffrey on the ground had a big day, 152 yards. And San Francisco still undefeated with CMC in games where their quarterback is healthy. Of course, their one CMC loss was the NFC Championship game in Philadelphia. And San Francisco dominated in time of possession, 37 minutes to 22 minutes. As I've said before, I don't fully buy into Brock Purdy, but you know what? After this start, it's looking like it's going in the right direction. I still want to see more, obviously, but hey, maybe I was wrong. For Pittsburgh, I definitely expected a lot more, so we'll see if they get things back on track next week. For San Fran, they have a division matchup with the LA Rams next week. Our second loser, no surprise, it's the New York Giants. Probably the worst loss I've seen from the Giants since being a fan. I saw this tweet from The Athletic this morning, and it pretty much summed up how bad this game was. No team in the NFL has ever lost 40-0 or worse, lost the sack battle 7-0 or worse, lost the turnover battle 3-0 or worse, had a field goal blocked and returned for a touchdown, and threw a pick 6 in the same game. So all those things happened, and obviously that resulted in a Dallas Cowboys 40-0 victory. The Giants from this game have a few major issues. Their offensive line sucks. Mark Lewinsky, their right guard, allowed 3 sacks in this game. It seems like maybe opposing teams have figured out this Giants offense, which worked early on last year, but then the Giants had a tough stretch in the second half of the year. Then they had some cake matchups with the Vikings twice, the Colts once. But against these good to elite teams, games, the Giants offense has not looked good in a long time. And aside from their offensive line, they do need Daniel Jones to process the defense a bit better. It seems like in these tough matchups, he's just a deer in headlights sometimes. As Giants fans, we were hoping all offseason that the Giants had closed the gap with the upper echelon of the NFC East being Dallas and Philly, but after watching this game, I mean, I can't really say that we have. If you combine the last two meaningful Giants games, which was the Philadelphia playoff loss last year and this Week 1 game yesterday, the Giants lost a combined 78-7 in those two games. That's how bad it's been. Our third winner is the Miami Dolphins. In the tough AFC, I had the Dolphins missing the playoffs due to a tiebreaker. I had them at 9-8, but man, if Tua stays healthy, I'm definitely gonna be wrong, aren't I? Speaking of Tua, he looked incredible. 28 for 45, 466 passing yards, and 3 passing touchdowns. He was throwing with anticipation, he was eluding pass rushers, and there was a point in the third quarter where he made 2 amazing throws in a row to Braxton Berrios. I know sometimes people have that lazy narrative that Tua is a Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle merchant, but this guy made 2 of the best throws I've seen to Braxton Berrios in the third quarter. It was like he took the ball, walked it to him, and placed it in the exact spot it had to be. Tyreek Hill, who did say at one point he wants to have a 2,000-yard season, is pretty much over 10% of the way there through one game. Tyreek had 11 catches, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tua was not sacked even one time. That was with Teron Armstead out, so that's very impressive. And with the Chargers having a chance to go down the field and get a field goal, the Dolphins pass rush made some big plays, and a game-clinching sack by Jalen Phillips was the difference. On the downside though, Miami did get destroyed on the ground by the Chargers rushing attack. Josh Kelly and Austin Eckler were amazing, and the Chargers had 234 yards on the ground. There was also some bad snap exchanges with their center, Connor Williams, and that actually cost them potential points in the first quarter. And as for the Chargers, after the blown lead to the Jaguars in the playoffs last year, a 27-point lead, at this point I just feel bad for Justin Herbert. Like, they gotta get that right at some point. They're wasting this man's career like they wasted Phillip Rivers. Our last loser was the Seattle Seahawks. They had a 30-13 loss while being favorites by 4.5 to the Los Angeles Rams. And when I was going over the game spreads, this line felt very trappy, so I just stayed away from it. And now I see why. Boye Mafe and Uchenna Nwosu played well, but the rest of the defense didn't really show up. The Seahawks defense created pressure on only 5% of Matthew Stafford's dropbacks. That was their lowest rate in a game in 5 years. They let Puka Nacua in his debut go off, and Tutu Atwell. They absolutely destroyed that secondary. Geno Smith did not look good either. He could not locate his deep ball. It looked like he lacked confidence. And on 26 pass attempts, Geno only had 112 passing yards. Seattle gets an interesting matchup in Detroit next week. And if you remember, these two teams played each other last year in Detroit as well, and the Seahawks won a 48-45 shootout. We definitely have to watch Seattle's injury report, and of course Detroit has extended rest having played on Thursday. So right now things are in their favor, and Seattle may be staring 0-2 in the face. That's gonna do it for this week's overreaction. I definitely want to make an NFL video every week at some point, so let me know in the comments. Do you guys prefer the videos where I go over every team, or one video focusing on a specific team? Before I sign off, definitely have to give a shout out to the Lions. They definitely performed well on Thursday. The Buccaneers had an upset win. The Steelers got to get called out for how bad they played. The Broncos got to get called out for blowing that game to the Raiders. The Bears coaching and defense looks pretty horrible through 1 week. And of course the Cowboys, they want to be taken seriously as an NFC contender and Super Bowl contender, and beating a division rival 40-0 is a good way to start. So that'll do it. Once again, leave in the comments which videos you want to see next week, and I'll talk to you guys next time.